My name is Jeremiah McIntyre. I'm 74 years old. I'm a retired high school teacher of geography and astronomy from the Old Tech Magnet School. And I've lived here in Silver Spring, Maryland, ever since I married my Eulalia. You know, son, life throws you some curveballs. There are times when things come full circle, and you can't even begin to imagine what's coming next. What I'm going to tell you today completely changed the path of my life, and maybe it will change yours too. It was a Friday night around 10 o'clock. I was out on the porch, sitting in my rocking chair, sipping a cup of strong, sweet coffee, the kind with chicory that only us folks down here know how to brew right, while I gazed at the stars. I've always loved looking at the sky, ever since I was a little boy, and my daddy taught me to recognize the constellations back on the farm. A cool breeze was blowing, carrying that fresh scent of jasmine. That's when the phone rang. Welcome to my channel. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and gave my video a like. Now let's jump into the story. I'm sure you'll enjoy it till the end. It was my mother-in-law, Mrs. Imelda, a devout 90-year-old lady, a respected herbalist and healer in our community. Ever since I first met my Eulalia back in 1973, Mrs. Imelda has treated me like a son, her child of God. She called me with that sweet, familiar tone of hers, but that night, her voice sounded different, broken, trembling. "Hello, Jeremiah, my son. Forgive me for what I have to tell you," she said, sobbing. "What is it, Mrs. Imelda? Are you feeling poorly?" I asked, standing up, immediately worried. "No, son. It's worse than that. I saw it with these old eyes that the worms will eat one day. Lala, my girl, she's cheating on you, Jeremiah." It was like the ground had opened up beneath my feet. I almost dropped the phone. Eulalia and I, married for 47 years, a whole life built together, and she was cheating on me. How, Mrs. Imelda? How is this possible? And then came the knife twist, with Mr. Nathaniel Hawthorne, your closest friend. Nathaniel wasn't my blood brother, no, but he was as close as one could be. We met in 1959, when I was just 8 years old, and he was 10. He was an orphan, raised by his aunt, and we grew up together, sharing everything, fishing in the Patuxent River, stealing peaches from the neighbor's orchard, and swimming in the creek, and playing flag football in the empty field every afternoon. He was my best man at our wedding, and the godfather to my only son, Joshua, who is now 45. "Impossible, Mrs. Imelda. You must be mistaken. Nathaniel is like a brother to me, more than a brother. Forgive me, son, but these eyes might be old, but they still see. I saw them today at the mall, right there in the parking lot, kissing. And it's not the first time. My girl has lost her mind, Jeremiah." I hung up the phone, my mind reeling. My head spun like a top. Eulalia had gone out earlier, saying she was visiting a sick friend. I looked at our framed photo on the wall from Joshua's college graduation day. Oh, we were smiling, holding each other. How could this be? Did 47 years of marriage mean nothing? I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned in bed like a stirred-up hive. The next day, Eulalia got up early as always. She made my coffee with those fresh buttermilk biscuits. Only she knows how to bake. She said she was going to the beauty parlor. "Time to touch up these roots, you see? I'm going completely gray," she told me. "After, I'm going to stop by the farmer's market to buy that special hot pepper jelly you like for your fried chicken." She kissed me on the forehead, just like she did every day, and left. I don't know what came over me. I'd never done this before, but I followed my Eulalia. I got in the car and drove after her, keeping my distance. I saw her drive right past Mrs. Zulema's beauty salon, where she always got her hair done. She continued down Route 29, crossed through the city, and stopped in front of the apartment building where Nathaniel had lived since retiring from the bank. I sat in my car, feeling a tightness in my chest that made it almost impossible to breathe. She went into the building and didn't come out for 3 hours. In that moment, staring at Nathaniel's building, I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. I remembered my childhood, how it all began. I was born in 1951 on a small farm near Ellicott City, a little town here in Maryland. My father, Mr. Astolfo, was a sharecropper, who later became a small-time tobacco farmer. Our house was simple, made of wood, with dirt floors and a wood-burning stove that stayed lit all day. It was a hard life, but full of blessings. We had an orchard with plums, figs, peaches, and oranges. In the yard there were chickens scratching, a small pen with 3 pigs, and a dairy cow that gave us that frothy, fresh-milked goodness. My mother, Mrs. Wilhelmina, made the best country cheese in the whole region. She even sold it in Baltimore. I'm the middle of 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. When the rain was heavy, the creek near our house would flood, and we'd go out with a net to catch sunfish. Those little fish, fried in lard, with toasted corn and lemon. Oh, my mouth still waters just thinking about it. Childhood on the farm teaches you a lot. I learned early that in life you have to be patient, just like when you plant a seed and wait for it to grow. It was 1959. I was 8 years old when my father decided we had to move to Silver Spring. The hailstorm had wiped out our tobacco crop, and he found a job in the silver factory. I remember the truck loaded with our belongings. My mother cried, leaving the land where she was born. The city was a new world for us, full of noise and different kinds of people. We went to live in a simple little house in the Hilltop neighborhood near the commuter rail line. Every day at 5 a.m. and 6 p.m., the train whistle marked the rhythm of our lives. In the first week of classes at the public school, I met Nathaniel. He was bigger than the other kids, shy, always with his head down. The boys made fun of him because he didn't have a mother or father. He lived with his Aunt Jackie, a woman who sold handmade crafts outside the church on Sundays. One day, during recess, I saw 3 boys cornering Nathaniel behind the water fountain. "Look at the orphan. Where's your mommy? Oh, that's right, you don't have one," they laughed. I never understood why some people find pleasure in the misfortune of others. Even though I was smaller, I stepped into the middle and said, "Leave him alone, guys. What kind of cowards are you?" One of the boys shoved me. I fell to the ground, scraping my knee, but Nathaniel, who was always quiet, launched himself at the 3 of them, like a raging bull. I'd never seen anything like it. It was a tremendous scandal. The principal, Mrs. Indira, came out. We all got detention. My father spanked me with his belt when he found out, but he said I did the right thing by defending the weaker boy. From that day on, Nathaniel and I were inseparable. He came to my house to eat almost every day. My mother would add more water to the red beans and say, "There's enough for everyone, little one." During summer break, we'd go to the river, climb up to the park lookout, and hunt for small game with a slingshot. Things kids did back then that nobody does anymore. When we hit our early teenage years around 1965, when I was 13 or 14, Nathaniel started working as a delivery boy at Mr. Tony's Bakery. He got up at 4 in the morning to help make the bread. Then he'd head out on his bike, carrying those big baskets. I also got my first job as a helper at the hardware store. We saved our money to go to the downtown cinema on Sundays to see movies starring Sidney Poitier. There was a time, in 1967, when I was 16, when Nathaniel almost got into real trouble. Some guys from the downtown area were inviting him to do a job that offered easy money. It was a difficult time in the country. The civil rights movement was still unfolding, and many people were struggling. I was the one who stopped him. "Friend, a crooked path only leads to a bad place," I told him, repeating what my father always said. In 1969, when I was 18, my father had an accident at the factory. A piece of shrapnel hit his eye. He lost vision in one side. I had to quit my studies to work more and help at home. Nathaniel, who was already earning a little better at the bank where he had started as a messenger, helped us too. He brought groceries, paid for medicine. "Jeremiah, your family is my family," he said. And it was true. It was him who encouraged me to go back to school at the night high school. "You're too smart to be carrying weight all your life," he'd say. In 1971, at age 20, I got a job as an aide in the state school secretary's office, working during the day and studying at night. Nathaniel would wait for me after class. We walked home, talking all the way, through the typical winter fog of Silver Spring. I remember one special night in 1972. We were sitting on the curb outside my house, looking at the stars. I always loved astronomy. I knew all the constellations. "That one there is Orion, the Hunter," I explained. "And that one is the Big Dipper." Nathaniel looked at me seriously and said, "You know, Jeremiah, you should be a teacher. You talk about these things with a sparkle in your eyes that's contagious." That conversation changed my life. The next day, I went looking for information on a teaching career. And that's how I discovered my calling. In 1973, I entered the university to study geography, with a specialization in astronomy. I studied in the morning, worked in the afternoon, and tutored at night to make ends meet. And it was in one of those tutoring sessions that fate introduced me to Eulalia. It was a Thursday in April of 1973. I was 22 years old when Mrs. Senia, the school coordinator where I worked, called me into her office. "Jeremiah, I have a senior student who needs extra help in geography for the college entrance exam. Are you tutoring?" "No? I was thinking of recommending you." I accepted right away. I needed the extra cash. The next day, there I was, waiting in the public library, where I usually held my classes. I sat at that wooden table, with my books neatly organized, checking the clock every minute. At 3 o'clock sharp, I heard footsteps in the quiet corridor. When I looked up, I saw the most beautiful girl my eyes had ever seen. Long black hair, obsidian-colored eyes, and a shy smile. She wore a navy skirt and a white blouse, the uniform of the convent school. She carried a leather satchel under her arm. "Good afternoon. Are you Professor Jeremiah?" she asked in a soft voice. "That's me, but drop the professor. I'm not that old," I replied. And she let out a little laugh that left me speechless. "I'm Eulalia Montgomery," she said, extending her delicate hand. When I took it to shake, I felt a different kind of warmth travel up my arm. "Ah, youth. Right?" In that first class, I could barely explain the different types of rock formations. My tongue tied up. I forgot what I was going to say. Eulalia paid attention to everything. She asked questions. She took notes in her neat notebooks. At the end of the class, when she left, I stayed sitting there, staring into space, with a silly smile on my face. When I told Nathaniel about the new student, he caught on immediately. "You've been struck by Cupid's arrow, haven't you, friend?" he said, patting me on the back. "Just be careful. The Montgomery family is well off. They own the big lumber mill, and they say her father is a bear." So, the tutoring continued for weeks. I prepared more and more for each session. I wanted to impress Eulalia with my knowledge. I talked about rivers, mountains, the compass rose, and especially the stars. When I mentioned astronomy, her eyes lit up. I love looking at the sky at night, she confessed. Since I was little, my mother would show me the three sisters from my bedroom window. That's when I gathered my courage. There's a perfect place to see the stars. At the top of the local park hill, the view is perfect. If you want, I can show you the constellations from there this Saturday night. She hesitated. Dad won't let me go out at night with boys. We can go as a group, I quickly suggested. I'll bring my friend Nathaniel, and you can invite a girlfriend. And that's how it happened. The next Saturday, there were 4 of us at the top of the hill. Me, Nathaniel, Eulalia, and her friend Denise. I brought my old binoculars and showed her the moon, Venus, the Southern Cross constellation. Eulalia looked on in wonder. Meanwhile, Nathaniel and Denise walked off a bit, talking in low voices. It was the first of many astronomical expeditions, as we called them. Soon, we no longer needed Nathaniel and Denise as chaperones. Eulalia's father, Mr. Irwin, eventually allowed his daughter to go out with me after I was formally introduced to the family. I remember that day as if it were yesterday. I was shaking with fear, in my best starched shirt, hair neatly combed, standing in the living room of the Montgomery mansion. It was a huge house in the affluent part of town, with manicured lawns, a swimming pool, and an imported car in the garage. Mr. Irwin looked me up and down, frowning. So you're my daughter's geography tutor. What family do you come from, young man? I'm the son of Astolfo McIntyre, sir. My father works at the factory, and my mother is a homemaker. He squinted. Simple family. And what are your intentions with Eulalia? My legs were trembling, but I held my head high. The most serious possible, Mr. Irwin. I'm studying. I'm going to graduate as a teacher, and I intend to give your daughter a decent future if she accepts me. Behind him, Eulalia looked at me with tear-filled eyes and a sweet smile. Her mother, Mrs. Imelda, a small woman with a gentle nature, placed a hand on her husband's arm and said, "The boy seems decent, Irwin, and the girl loves him." For months, our courtship was closely monitored. I could only visit Eulalia on Sundays on the front porch with the maid always nearby, or we went out in a group, never alone. But that didn't diminish what we felt. Every day, I fell more in love with her. Her easy laugh, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, and the kindness with which she treated everyone. In 1975, 2 years after we started dating, I graduated from college. I was 24, and I was already working as a substitute teacher at a state school. The day of my graduation, I gathered all the courage in the world, and in front of my parents, her parents, and Nathaniel, I asked for Eulalia's hand in a marriage. Mr. Irwin cleared his throat. He looked at me seriously. "You may not have pedigree, young man, but you have character, and that's worth more. Take good care of my princess." It was his way of saying, yes. We spent a year engaged, saving money. I married Eulalia in 1976 in a simple ceremony at the First Baptist Church. I was 25. She was 21. Nathaniel was my best man. He cried more than my mother during the entire ceremony. As a wedding gift, Mr. Irwin gave us a small plot of land in a new neighborhood. We built our first house there, simple but cozy. The first few years were tough. I taught at 2 schools, morning and afternoon, and Eulalia worked as a secretary in a doctor's office, but we were immensely happy. In 1980, our Joshua was born. When the doctor placed that crying bundle in my arms, I felt my heart nearly jump out of my chest. A strong boy, with his mother's eyes and, they said, my stubborn chin. Nathaniel became his godfather, of course. By then, he had already become a branch manager at the bank. He was doing well financially, still single. He said he hadn't found the right woman. "When I find one like your Eulalia, I'll get married," he'd joke. But beneath the humor, I knew he missed having a family of his own. The years passed. Our life was that blessed routine of work, home, and raising Joshua. Christmas with the families gathered. 4th of July parties with fireworks and barbecue. Summer vacations in Ocean City, when we could afford it. Eulalia and I were always together in the small and big things. We had our ups and downs, of course. In 1985, we almost separated over a silly argument that snowballed into something big. I, stubborn as always, went a week without talking to her properly. It was Nathaniel who knocked some sense into both of us. He came over one night, sat us both down in the living room, and said, "You two are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You're not going to ruin this over pride, are you?" And so, we continued building our story. In 1992, I got a permanent position as a full-time teacher at the Tech Magnet School, realizing my dream of teaching geography and astronomy at the college preparatory level. Eulalia went back to school and earned her nursing degree. Our Joshua grew up strong and studious. Nathaniel remained a part of our family. He ate dinner with us almost every Sunday. He brought gifts for Joshua, and he helped whenever we needed it. He was the uncle my son didn't have by blood, but had by love. And to think that now, 47 years later, I was sitting in a car watching my Eulalia walk into the building of the man I had always considered a brother. When Joshua turned 18 in 1998, we threw a party that people still talk about here in Silver Spring. We had a barbecue at the small cabin we bought with our savings, a little piece of land near Frederick, a town nearby. We gathered more than 100 people, family, friends, schoolmates. Nathaniel, of course, was there, proud as if he were the father. He brought his godson a small scooter for riding around the country trails. "Uncle Nathaniel, are you crazy? My dad is going to kill me." Joshua laughed, his eyes sparkling with joy. "No way, kid. I already talked to your dad, and besides, you're a grown man now. You're starting college. You need responsibility," Nathaniel replied, winking at me. It was true. Our boy had been accepted into the civil engineering program at the state university. He was going to be the first in the family with a university degree, since I only had my bachelor's. My chest swelled with pride when I talked about it with my colleagues. Who would have thought the son of a sharecropper would raise an engineer? Well, I'd comment to Eulalia on the nights we spent in the hammock on the porch, watching the stars, just like we did when we were young. In 2000, at age 49, I received an invitation to be the coordinator of the geography department at the school. It was an important recognition in my career. Eulalia, who by then was a charge nurse at the General Hospital, was just as proud as I was. We were able to buy a better car, renovate the house, and even take a trip up north. We went to visit Boston, Massachusetts, a city Eulalia had always dreamed of seeing, especially during the holiday season with all the lights. On that trip, I remember we were sitting in a cafe, drinking hot cocoa, and looking at the decorations hanging everywhere. Eulalia poised my hand across the table and said, her eyes moist, "You know, Jeremiah, if someone asked me if I would change anything in my life, I'd say no. Everything was worth it to get here with you." Those words warmed me more than any hot cocoa. 49 years old, 24 years of marriage, and the love only grew stronger. In 2002, at age 51, I had a health scare. a minor heart attack, one of those that serves as a warning. I was hospitalized for a week. Eulalia never left my side for a minute. She slept in that uncomfortable hospital chair. She bathed me, managed my medication. Nathaniel also showed up every day, bringing fruit, magazines, and good conversation to distract me. When I returned home, I had to change many things. Quit the occasional cigarette I smoked secretly, cut out the grease, and start taking walks. And that's when Nathaniel started coming over almost every afternoon. He had retired from the bank a year earlier with a good package and had free time. "Come on, friend, let's walk. I can't let you die before me. Who will push me in my wheelchair when I'm old?" he'd say. We'd go out early when the sun was still cool, walk up to the park lookout, and come back. Along the way, we talked about everything: politics, sports, city news, and especially we recalled old stories, like that time we were kids and stole peaches from old Mr. Henderson's orchard and ran so fast we got home with our clothes torn up by the fence thorns. In 2005, at age 54, our Joshua graduated as an engineer. Eulalia and I went to the graduation in New York City, dressed in our best clothes. Nathaniel went too, of course. Into the official photo, there are the four of us: me, Eulalia, Joshua with his diploma in hand, and Nathaniel, all smiling as if the world were ours. After the graduation came another joy. Joshua met Penelope, a beautiful girl from Philadelphia, also an engineer. They dated for 2 years, and in 2007, when I was 56, we celebrated their wedding, a lovely ceremony, at the First Baptist Church here in Silver Spring, followed by a reception at the downtown club. I remember the speech I gave at the wedding, my voice cracking. "My son, you were the greatest blessing in my life. Seeing you grow, graduate, and now start your own family is the realization of a dream. And Penelope, my dear daughter-in-law, welcome to our family. May you build a story as beautiful as the one Eulalia and I have built." Nathaniel, sitting at the main table with us, gave a standing ovation, tears in his eyes. Always so emotional. That big man. In 2008, at age 57, I became a grandfather for the first time. Our little granddaughter, Clara, was born strong and healthy, the spitting image of a young Eulalia, even though she was my son's daughter. The emotion of holding that tiny thing in my arms is indescribable. "Grandpa Jeremiah," Eulalia would whisper to me as she rocked the baby. "Grandpa Jeremiah." It sounded strange and wonderful at the same time. Nathaniel showed up at the hospital with the biggest bouquet of flowers I'd ever seen and a teddy bear almost as big as the baby. "The great uncle has the right to spoil her too, right?" he'd say proudly. In 2010, at age 59, our second grandson, Ben, was born. 2 years later, in 2012, came Annie, 3 grandchildren to fill our old age with joy. Joshua and Penelope settled right here in Silver Spring. He opened an engineering office that slowly grew, and she worked with him. They came to eat with us every Sunday, a sacred ritual. In 2015, at age 64, I retired from the Tech Magnet School after more than 40 years of service. They threw me a surprise party with former students from several generations, people I didn't even remember teaching, who showed up to say how my classes had made a difference. I confess, I cried like a child. Retirement gave me more time to dedicate myself to my passions. Amateur astronomy? I finally bought a decent telescope, the vegetable garden we keep in the backyard, and especially the grandchildren. Grandpa Jeremiah became a specialist in telling stories, making paper airplanes, and taking them fishing at the local reservoir. Eulalia retired the following year, in 2016, at age 61. We could finally enjoy this phase of life we had looked forward to so much together. We made some travel plans, but we ended up preferring to stay nearby with the family. We went to the cabin near Frederick almost every weekend. We took the grandkids, made cheese, apple butter, and homemade bread. A simple life, but so full. Nathaniel, who never married, was a constant presence. "You all are my family," he always said. And it was true. The grandchildren called him Grandpa Nathaniel, even though he wasn't a grandfather by blood. He deserved it. Always present in all the important moments, always ready to help, listen, and advise. In 2019, at age 68, we had a huge scare with Eulalia. She started feeling severe pains in her abdomen. She lost weight quickly. Tests showed a tumor in her intestine. It was months of anguish, hospitals, and chemotherapy. I never left her side. I slept in that same uncomfortable hospital chair where she had slept for me years earlier. Nathaniel was an angel during that time. He took care of the house when I couldn't. He cooked, drove us to and from the hospital, handled paperwork, and talked to the doctors. "Friend, rest for a bit. I'll stay with her now," he'd say, forcing me to go home, shower, and sleep for a few hours. Thank God, after 6 months of treatment, Eulalia recovered completely. The doctor said we caught the cancer early, and the chances of her living many more years were excellent. It was like being born again. We started making plans again, dreaming, living each day as if it were a gift. And it was. After so many years together, I looked at my Eulalia with the same admiration as the first day. Her hair was gray now, with a few wrinkles around her eyes, but she had that same sweet smile, that same way of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. How could I, on that warm afternoon in 2025, at age 74, after everything we'd been through, be suspecting that she was cheating on me with Nathaniel, the man I considered a brother, my son's godfather, my grandchildren's great-uncle? 3 hours passed while I waited in the car in front of Nathaniel's building. The sun was already beginning to set, painting the sky with that orange glow typical of Silver Spring sunsets. The suffocating heat made me sweat, even with the windows down. Or maybe it was the agony itself. My head was spinning with 1,000 thoughts. Memories of happy moments mixed with Mrs. Imelda's words on the phone. Kissing in the parking lot. It's not the first time. Doubt is a poison that eats away at you from the inside, you know? And I, who always considered myself a rational man, who taught students to look for evidence before jumping to conclusions, was hiding there like a teenager, spying on my own wife. At 5:30 p.m., the building door opened. Eulalia walked out, adjusted her purse on her shoulder, and looked around as if she were looking for someone or checking if she was being watched. She seemed tired, her face drawn. My heart sped up. She didn't go toward the bus stop as I expected. Instead, she walked to a drugstore on the corner and went in. She came out about 15 minutes later with a small bag, crossed the street, and finally went to the bus stop. I stayed there, watching her wait, board the southbound bus line that passes near our house, and leave. I didn't follow her. Something inside me told me I needed to confront Nathaniel first. Man to man. I took a deep breath, gathered my courage, and got out of the car. My legs felt like they weighed a ton as I walked toward the building. The doorman, a young man who didn't know me, asked where I was going. "To visit Mr. Nathaniel Hawthorne, apartment 302, I replied, trying to sound as normal as possible. "Your name, please." "Jeremiah McIntyre. I'm his brother." The word caught in my throat. "Ah, yes, Mr. Jeremiah. He said you would be coming up." That surprised me. Nathaniel was expecting me? How did he know I would come? Did Eulalia tell him that I had found out? My heart hammered so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears as the elevator ascended. I stopped in front of the door to apartment 302, a simple but well-located place. Nathaniel had bought it after his retirement because it was close to downtown and had easy access to everything. So many times, Eulalia and I had had dinner there, watched football games, and celebrated birthdays. I knocked on the door once, twice, 3 times. No one answered. I was about to turn around, thinking he must have gone out, when I remembered I still had a copy of the key. Nathaniel had given it to me years ago in case of an emergency. I checked my pocket, and there it was. "This is an emergency for sure," I mumbled to myself as I opened the door. The apartment was dimly lit, with only the late afternoon light filtering through the curtain slats. There was a strange smell in the air. Cleaning products, alcohol, medicine. "Nathaniel?" I called, stepping inside slowly. "Is anyone here?" I heard a noise coming from the living room. I walked toward it, and when I turned the corner of the hallway, the scene I saw left me frozen. Nathaniel was sitting on the sofa. No, he wasn't just sitting. He was slumped over, his shoulders drooping, his head in his hands. On the coffee table in front of him, there was a pile of scattered papers, some medicine boxes, and a wig. A short, brown wig. He slowly raised his head. His face was thin, pale, with deep dark circles under his eyes. It didn't look like the face of my friend. Nathaniel, always so strong, so full of life, looked like he had aged 20 years in an instant. "Jeremiah," he said, startled. His voice was weak, hoarse. "What are you doing here, friend?" I was speechless for a moment. All the harsh words I had rehearsed in the car vanished. This didn't look like the man who would be having an affair with my wife. He looked like a sick man, very sick. "I came to see you," I stammered. "What's going on, Nathaniel? Are you ill?" He looked away, ran a hand over his tired face, and then over his hair, which I now noticed was much thinner than normal. "Sit down here, Jeremiah," he said, indicating the spot beside him on the couch. "We need to talk." I approached slowly and sat down. That's when I noticed a framed photo turned face down among the papers. Nathaniel followed my gaze and, with a sigh, flipped the frame over. It was a photo of the 4 of us, me, Eulalia, Nathaniel, and Joshua as a baby. It must have been taken around 1981. "Remember that day?" he asked with a weak smile. "It was Joshua's christening. You made me hold him, and I was terrified of dropping the baby." I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "Nathaniel, what is happening? Why was Eulalia here? And the wig?" He took a deep breath and looked me in the eyes. There were tears in his own. "I didn't want you to find out this way, friend. To be honest, I didn't want you to find out at all." "Find out what?" He picked up one of the papers from the table and handed it to me. It was a medical report. I started reading, but the technical terms swam before my eyes. I only managed to identify a few words. Neoplasm, metastatic, guarded prognosis. "It's cancer, Jeremiah," he said, his voice breaking. "Advanced pancreatic cancer. I found out 3 months ago." It was as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. My friend, my best friend, my soul brother, had cancer. "But why didn't you tell me? And what does Eulalia have to do with this?" Nathaniel shifted on the sofa, wincing with pain as he moved. "I didn't want to tell anyone. Understand? Especially you. You already lost John to cancer last year, your childhood friend. I saw how it affected you. And after everything you and Eulalia went through with her cancer in 2019, I didn't want to bring that worry back." It was true. John, another childhood friend, had recently died of lung cancer. A lifelong smoker, he didn't last 6 months after the diagnosis. But Eulalia found out by accident, Nathaniel explained. About 2 months ago, I had a severe pain crisis and ended up in the same hospital where she used to work. A nurse, who was her former colleague, recognized me and called her. When Eulalia got there and saw my condition, saw the test results, well, you know your wife. But she hid it too, I said, with a hint of bitterness. Because I begged her, Jeremiah. I made her promise. I told her I would tell you when I was ready. He paused, swallowing hard. But the truth is, I was never going to be ready. How do I tell my best friend, my brother, that I only have a few months left to live? His words hit me like a punch. A few months? Was it that serious? The doctors talked about 3 months, maybe 4 if I responded well to treatment. I'm 3 months into this fight now. I started chemotherapy. That's why the wig. He pointed to the wig on the table. I bought it so I wouldn't scare people, especially your grandkids, when they came to visit. But you haven't been over to the house these last few Sundays, I said, remembering that Nathaniel hadn't been at our traditional Sunday lunches for almost a month. I wasn't in shape, friend. After chemo, I get really sick, vomiting, weak. I didn't want you and the kids to see me like this. I looked around and started noticing the signs. The apartment, usually so tidy, had layers of dust in the corners. There were a few dishes in the sink, visible from the living room, a blanket on the sofa, a pillow, indicating he had slept there, probably because he didn't have the strength to go to the bedroom. And Eulalia has been coming to help you, I finally concluded. He nodded. 2-3 times a week. She goes with me to chemo, cooks, cleans the house a bit, helps me bathe on the days I'm weakest. I don't know what I would do without her, Jeremiah. Tears started streaming down my face, tears of sorrow for my friend's illness, shame for having suspected something so low, and gratitude for Eulalia's kindness. Why did she leave so distraught today and go to the drugstore? We got some bad news today, Nathaniel replied, lowering his eyes. The chemo isn't having the expected effect. The tumor is still growing. The doctor talked about stopping the treatment, focusing only on palliative care for quality of life. Quality of life, I repeated, knowing what that meant in medical jargon. There was no hope of a cure anymore. Eulalia was devastated. She cried a lot. She went to the drugstore to get more pain medication, because the ones I have are running out, and the ones the doctor prescribed today haven't arrived at the hospital pharmacy yet. In that moment, all my jealousy, all my suspicions seemed so petty, so small. While I was imagining betrayal, my wife was actually being my best friend's guardian angel in his most difficult moments. And Nathaniel, my friend, my brother from another mother, was dying. You won't face this alone, I said, grasping his arm. Not just with Eulalia. I'm here. We are all here. I didn't want to be a burden. A burden? You, who have always been our support in everything, Nathaniel. You are family. And family doesn't abandon family. His tears were now falling freely. I'm scared, friend, he confessed, his voice breaking. Not of dying, but of dying alone. I hugged my friend, feeling how thin, how frail he was. In that embrace, all our shared history flashed like a movie. The childhood games, the teenage confidences, the adult advice, the shared joys, the difficult moments overcome side by side. You won't be alone, I promised. Never again. When I left Nathaniel's apartment that night, I was a different man. I agreed with him that I would return the next day with Eulalia to talk things over. He reluctantly accepted, but I saw a flicker of relief in his eyes. The weight of carrying that secret alone must have been crushing. On the way home, inside the bus, which was nearly empty at that hour, my head was boiling. How could I have suspected Eulalia? How could I have imagined that the woman who gave me daily proof of love and loyalty for 47 years would be cheating on me, and with Nathaniel, of all people? I got off at the stop near home and walked slowly through the streets of our neighborhood. The lights were already on. Kids were playing on the sidewalks, enjoying the end of the day's heat. Neighbors greeted me, "Good evening, Professor Jeremiah," and I responded automatically, still processing everything I had just discovered. Turning the corner, I saw our house, simple but cozy, with the well-tended garden that was Eulalia's pride, the begonias and ferns on the porch, the jasmine bush that perfumed the summer nights, the rocking chair where I used to sit and read the newspaper. In that moment, all of it seemed even more precious. I opened the gate, and before I could reach the front door, it opened. Eulalia was standing there, her face marked by hours of crying, her eyes swollen and worried. "Where were you, Jeremiah?" "I was worried," she said, her voice trembling. I looked at that woman who knew every detail of my being, every dream, every fear, and I felt a profound shame for having doubted her. "I know everything, Eulalia," I said directly. "I just left Nathaniel's apartment." Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. She covered her mouth with her hand. "Jeremiah, I was going to tell you, I swear. But Nathaniel made me promise." "I know, my love." He explained everything to me. We went inside and sat down in the living room, our hands clasped. For long minutes, we just cried together without saying anything. Sometimes, words are unnecessary when you've known someone for nearly half a century. "How did you find out?" she finally asked. I hesitated, but decided to be honest. "Your mother called me last night. She saw the two of you at the mall. She thought, well, that you were having an affair." Eulalia's eyes widened, and then she let out a sad laugh. "Mom and her imagination. I met Nathaniel at the mall yesterday because he had an appointment with the oncologist at the clinic on the second floor. He was very weak, and he felt unwell on the way out. He almost passed out. I held him, hugged him, and then helped him sit on a bench. I think I kissed him on the forehead. You know, the way you do with someone who's hurting. And your mother saw us from afar and misinterpreted," I completed, understanding the misunderstanding. Poor Mom, at 90 years old, her eyesight isn't what it used to be, and she's always been a little dramatic. Eulalia paused. Then she looked deeply into my eyes. "Wait, did you really think that Nathaniel and I looked down, ashamed. "For a few hours. Yes. Forgive me, Eulalia. It was a moment of weakness, of insecurity." She squeezed my hand. "Almost 50 years together, Jeremiah. You should know me better." "I know, my love. And I do know you. Deep down, I don't think I ever truly believed it. That's why I went to find out. I needed to see it with my own eyes." I paused, thinking about how to express what I felt. "But I won't lie to you. It hurt. The mere idea of losing you is like having a piece torn away from me." Eulalia held my face between her hands, just as she had done since we were young. "Look at me, Jeremiah. I chose you when I was 18. I've chosen you again, every single day of these 47 years. I will choose you until my last breath on this earth." We embraced tightly, feeling the warmth of each other, the comforting familiarity of two bodies that had grown old together. When we pulled apart, I saw a different light in her eyes. "Now that you know," she said, "we can help Nathaniel together. It's been so hard on him, Jeremiah, and hard on me too. keeping this secret from you. He told me the doctor suggested stopping the chemotherapy, I said, my voice catching just repeating it. Eulalia nodded sadly. Today's tests weren't good. The cancer has already spread to his liver and bones. It's only a matter of time. How much time? I asked, though I feared the answer. The doctor spoke of weeks, maybe a month or two at the most. A tear rolled down her cheek. He's suffering a lot with the pain, Jeremiah. The chemo is only worsening his quality of life without bringing real benefits. I jumped up, pacing the living room. The thought of losing Nathaniel was unbearable. That man had been part of my life since I was 8 years old. 66 years of friendship, of brotherhood. I won't accept this, I said determinedly. There must be other treatments, other medical opinions, maybe in New York City or Chicago. Jeremiah, Eulalia tried to calm me. He has already consulted 3 different oncologists. They all said the same thing. The type of cancer he has is very aggressive. And it was already advanced when it was discovered. Why didn't he seek help sooner? Why didn't he notice the symptoms? You know Nathaniel. He was always stubborn. He never liked doctors. When he finally sought help, because of the severe pain and weight loss, it was already too late. I sat back down, defeated. I remembered the last few times we had seen Nathaniel a few months back. He did look thinner, yes, but we attributed it to the diet he said he was on. He had complained of backaches. But who doesn't complain of aches and pains after age 70? I want to bring him to our house, I said with resolve. That apartment is no place for him to be alone, in this condition. Eulalia smiled, taking my hands in hers. I knew you would say that. I already started setting up the guest room, just in case. My Eulalia, I said, in awe, always one step ahead. I was just afraid you'd be angry for me keeping this from you, but deep down, I knew you would understand. I'm angry at Nathaniel for not trusting me, and at myself for not noticing what was happening sooner. That night, we called Mrs. Imelda to clear up the misunderstanding. At first, she was confused, then extremely embarrassed for having caused the situation. At almost 92, her eyesight was no longer reliable, and her imagination sometimes played tricks. Forgive me, my son, she whimpered over the phone. I just wanted to protect you both. It's all right, Mrs. Imelda, I assured her. You couldn't have known. That poor Nathaniel, such a good man. Life really is cruel to the best of us. The next morning, a Saturday, we woke up early. Eulalia prepared a basket of food that Nathaniel liked. Chicken broth, caramel flan, corn pudding. I set aside some of my favorite books, thinking they might help distract my friend during the long hours of solitude and pain. We got in the car and drove to his apartment. When we arrived, I rang the doorbell several times, but no one answered. I used the key, apprehensive. The apartment was silent. I called Nathaniel's name once, twice, nothing. Fear began to eat at me. Had something serious happened during the night? I hurried to the bedroom, my heart racing. There he was, lying in bed, his eyes closed, so still, that for one terrible moment I thought we had arrived too late. But then he took a shallow breath, a slight movement of his chest, and slowly opened his eyes. Friend, he murmured, his voice hoarse. What time is it? Almost 9 in the morning, I replied, relieved. You scared us. Sorry, I took strong pain medicine last night. It makes me woozy like this. Eulalia entered the room, placed the basket on the dresser, and went straight to help Nathaniel sit up. With her nurse's experience, she arranged the pillows behind him. She checked his temperature by touching his forehead. You have a fever, she said, worried. Did you take the antibiotics the doctor prescribed? Nathaniel nodded. Then he looked at me. You came to get me, didn't you? How do you know? I asked, surprised. A weak smile appeared on his emaciated face. I've known you for 66 years, Jeremiah. You think I don't know how your head works? I couldn't help but smile through the tears that were starting to form. Then pack your things, friend. You're coming home. While Yulia helped Nathaniel with his medication and morning wash-up, I started separating his clothes and personal items. I opened the closet, and neatly organized in one corner, I found a box of photo albums. Curious, I opened one. It was an old album with black and white and sepia photos. Nathaniel had kept memories of our whole life together. Us as kids in our swim trunks by the river, us at our high school graduation in our starched uniforms, at my wedding to Eulalia, at Joshua's christening, at birthday parties, barbecues, trips, 6 decades of friendship lovingly documented. One photo, in particular, caught my attention. It was from 1967, when we were 16. We were sitting on the curb, in front of my house, arms over each other's shoulders, smiling at the camera. Someone had written on the back with a pen, "Brothers, forever." It was at that moment that the reality of the situation hit me with its full force. It wasn't just a friend I was about to lose. It was a brother, a part of my history, my memories, and the person I had become. How could I go on without the one who had walked beside me since childhood? Nathaniel appeared at the bedroom door, leaning on Eulalia. He was dressed but seemed to have made a tremendous effort just for that. Seeing him so frail, so different from the strong man I knew, I felt my heart break. "You found my treasure," he said, pointing to the album in my hands. "Why did you keep all these photos?" I asked, showing him the album open to the 1967 picture. "Because you all are the only family I ever had, Jeremiah." His voice failed. "I always wanted to have a wife, like your Eulalia, kids like Joshua, grandchildren. But it didn't happen. So I clung to the family God gave me, you all." I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. "Do you remember that day?" I asked, showing the photo. "That was when you almost got involved with that downtown gang, and I gave you that lecture." He laughed, softly. "How could I forget? You saved my life that day, friend. If I had gone on that robbery with those guys, I would have ended up dead or in jail like all of them. And now it's my turn to try and save yours," I said, closing the album. "We're going to find the best doctors, the best treatments." Nathaniel shook his head with a serene look that surprised me. "There's nothing more to be done, Jeremiah, and I've accepted it. What I want now is quality in the time I have left, not quantity. I want to be with the people I love, without tubes, without machines, without poisons running through my veins." "But look at me," he pleaded. Seriously, I promised I would fight, and I fought. 3 months of chemo, radiation, experimental meds. Enough. The cancer won the battle, but it won't win the war. The war is about how I leave this world, and I want to leave on my own terms, with dignity, surrounded by love, without pain. Is that asking too much? I looked at Eulalia, who nodded slightly, her eyes moist. As a health professional, and someone who had already faced cancer, she understood what Nathaniel was asking. "It's not asking too much," I finally replied, "and we will give you exactly that, I promise." We packed the suitcases, the medication, the photo albums, and other personal mementos. Before leaving, Nathaniel asked for one last look at the apartment. "I bought this place thinking about old age," he commented, looking around. "I thought I'd live here until I was 90, at least, like my grandfather. Funny how life changes your plans. You can come back when you're better," I knew she had, even though I knew it was unlikely. He just smiled without answering. Deep down, all 3 of us knew the truth. Nathaniel wouldn't be returning to that apartment. The plans had changed forever. The weeks that followed were intense, difficult, but also filled with precious moments that I will cherish forever. Nathaniel settled into our guest room, which Eulalia transformed into a cozy space, with photos on the walls, an antique radio he loved, and even a small telescope I placed near the window so he could observe the stars on the nights when the pain kept him awake. We called Joshua the same day we brought Nathaniel home. Our son was in shock at the news. He and his godfather always had a very close relationship. Nathaniel was the one who took him fishing when he was a kid, who taught him to drive, who was present at every important moment of his life. "I'll bring the kids to see him tomorrow," Joshua said, his voice cracking over the phone. "Son," Eulalia intervened gently, "maybe it's a good idea to prepare the children first. Uncle Nathaniel is very different. Thinner, weaker. I don't want them to be scared. They're strong kids, Mom, and they adore their godfather. They need to say goodbye properly." And so it was. On Sunday, Joshua, Penelope, and the 3 grandchildren, Clara, 17, Ben, 15, and Annie, 13, came to visit. Before entering the room where Nathaniel was resting, Joshua spoke with his children, explaining the situation as clearly and gently as possible. When they came in, I saw Clara, our oldest granddaughter, her eyes fill with tears as she saw Nathaniel's condition. But she was brave. She went to the bed and took her godfather's hand affectionately. "Godfather, I brought you a new book," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's poetry. I know you like it." Nathaniel smiled, that smile that still lit up his face, even through the illness. "My little princess, always remembering this old man. Come here. Give me a hug." Clara hugged him carefully, as if he were made of glass. Ben came next, shyer, but equally emotional. He had just made the school football team, and enthusiastically told him about the first touchdown he scored. "Just like your dad," Nathaniel commented. "Joshua was good with the ball, too. Remember, Jeremiah, the championships we went to watch?" Little Annie, always the most attached to her great-uncle, climbed onto the bed and snuggled up next to him as she had done since she was a baby. "Grandpa Nathaniel, you're going to get better soon, right?" she asked, with that innocence only children have. A heavy silence fell over the room. Nathaniel looked at me, then at Joshua, as if asking for guidance on how to answer. It was Joshua who came closer, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Sweetheart, remember when we talked about the cycle of life? How everything is born, grows, and one day returns to nature? Godfather is sick, in a way that doctors can't cure." "Is he going to heaven, like Cinnamon?" the girl asked, referring to our dog who had died the year before. "Yes, my girl," Nathaniel replied, stroking her hair. "But not right now. Don't you worry. I still have many stories to tell you." That afternoon was special. We gathered everyone on the porch, Nathaniel in his wheelchair, warmly bundled despite the heat, as his body no longer regulated temperature well. We had a meal with all the dishes he loved. Smoky barbecue, collard greens, sweet potato pie, cornbread, and for dessert, apple butter with country cheese, a combination he adored since childhood. We took photos, talked, and told old stories. Nathaniel, although tired and in pain, insisted on participating in everything. There was an urgency in his words and gestures, as if he wanted to savor every second. At night, when everyone had left, and we gave him the medication to sleep comfortably, Nathaniel took my hand. "Thank you for this day, friend. It was one of the happiest of my life." "We'll have many more," I said, trying to sound optimistic. He smiled, but his gaze was realistic. "Not many, Jeremiah. I feel my body slowly giving up." In the following weeks, we established a routine. Eulalia, with her nurse's experience, took care of the medication, bathing, and feeding. I took care of entertaining Nathaniel. We read together, watched old movies, played dominoes when he had the strength, or simply talked. Joshua came over almost every day after work. The grandchildren, even with school in session, made a point of visiting their great-uncle at least 3 times a week. Clara, who had inherited my love for astronomy, sometimes sat by his bed with the telescope, showing Nathaniel the constellations that could be seen through the window. "Do you know what hurts the most?" Nathaniel asked me one night when we were alone in the room. "It's not the illness itself. It's not knowing I'm going to die. It's not having left anything of myself in this world." "What do you mean? You've left a lot, Nathaniel. Everyone who knows you has been touched by your kindness." "I don't mean that. I never had children, Jeremiah. I never passed my name, my blood, onto someone who would continue after I left. It'll be like I never existed." "That's nonsense, friend. Do you really believe that what's left of us on this earth is just DNA? What's left are the stories, the values, the lessons we pass on. And in that, you have been a father to many." He was silent, reflecting on my words. Then, with moist eyes, he confessed, "I always wanted a family like yours, you know? A wife, kids, grandkids. But I never found the right person. Or maybe you did, but you didn't have the courage." "What do you mean? Do you remember Denise, Eulalia's friend, who went with us to see the stars at the Park Hill?" "Of course I remember. You two dated for a while, didn't you?" 2 years. And I loved her, Jeremiah. But I was scared. Scared of not being good enough. Of not being able to give her the life she deserved. Me, an orphan raised by my aunt, with no formal education beyond a banking certificate. And her, a merchant's daughter, college educated. I ended up breaking it off, saying I wasn't ready for a serious commitment. "I never knew that," I said, surprised by the revelation. "You two seemed so good together." "It was the biggest mistake of my life. I found out years later that she got married. Had 3 kids. She was happy. But sometimes I wonder, what if I had been braver?" That conversation touched me deeply. I had never seen Nathaniel open up like that about his regrets. It was as if the closeness of death had opened a door to truths guarded for decades. As the days passed, his condition continued to deteriorate. The pain increased, even with higher doses of morphine. He began to sleep more, eat less, and have periods of mental confusion. The doctor who came to visit him at home, an oncologist Joshua knew who kindly agreed to make house calls, warned us that we were entering the final phase. One Sunday morning, about 6 weeks after bringing him to our house, Nathaniel had a moment of surprising lucidity. He was on the porch in his wheelchair, watching the sunrise. Eulalia had just given him his medication and went to make coffee. I sat beside him, as I did every morning. "How do you feel today, friend?" "At peace," he replied, with a clarity he hadn't shown for days. "You know, Jeremiah, I've been thinking a lot. I wanted to ask you a favor." "Anything." "In my will, I left everything divided between you, Joshua, and the kids. It's not much, but the apartment has good value, and I have some savings at the bank." "Nathaniel, we don't need to talk about this now." "Yes, we do," he interrupted firmly. "I want you to know everything is taken care of. But there's one thing I didn't put on paper. Something I can only entrust to you." He pointed to a small wooden box he had brought from the apartment, which he kept on the nightstand. "Inside there is an envelope with $15,000. I want you to use it to help 3 families here in the neighborhood. Mrs. Mary from the corner store, who's raising her grandkids alone. Mr. Gus from the repair shop, who lost his leg in that accident. And Tiago's family. That boy who used to sweep the bank street, remember? His daughter has health issues." I was surprised by the request, but also moved by his generosity. "I'll do it. You can count on me. But don't say it came from me. he asked. Say it's an anonymous donation from someone who cares. And if you can, keep helping those people after I'm gone, in my name, even if they don't know it. Of course I will. He smiled, satisfied. Then it's settled. That will be my mark on the world, Jeremiah. Not children of blood, but acts of kindness that will continue after me. That afternoon, the whole family gathered again. It was as if Nathaniel had summoned everyone, sensing his time was running out. Even Mrs. Imelda, my mother-in-law, came to visit, brought by Joshua. At 92, she had difficulty moving, but she insisted on seeing Nathaniel. "Forgive me for the misunderstanding, my son," she said, holding his hand with her wrinkled hands. "Nonsense, Mrs. Imelda. You were always like a mother to me, too. There's nothing to forgive." It was a special afternoon. Joshua brought his guitar and played the old songs Nathaniel liked. Songs by Otis Redding, Marvin Gaye, those soul classics from the 60s and 70s. Eulalia prepared a careful spread. The grandchildren showed school photos and shared news. It was like a celebration of life, even in the face of imminent death. At night, when everyone had left and Nathaniel was in bed, medicated to sleep comfortably, he called me close to the bedside. "Jeremiah, promise me something." "Anything, friend." "Promise me you'll keep looking at the stars, that you'll take your grandkids to the Park Hill, like we used to, and show them the sky." "I promise," I replied, my voice cracking. "And promise me you won't be too sad when I go, that you'll remember me with joy, telling our stories, our adventures." "That's asking too much, Nathaniel," I said, tears running freely down my face. "How can I not be sad losing my brother?" "Sadness is natural, friend. Just don't let it consume you. I lived a good life, you know. I had what many dream of and never achieve, a true brother, even without blood ties, a family that welcomed me as their own. Love, lots of love. I have nothing to complain about." I took his hand, feeling how cold and fragile it was. "We will miss you so much. But I won't be far," he smiled. "Whenever you look up at the starry sky, remember that I'm up there, looking out for you." 3 days later, on a quiet pre-dawn morning, Nathaniel passed away. He was asleep, without pain, without suffering. Eulalia was the first to realize when she went to give him his morning medication. "Jeremiah," she called in a low voice, her eyes wet. "He's gone." I entered the room slowly, as if afraid to wake him, but I knew he wouldn't wake up again. His face was serene, almost with a faint smile. I touched his still warm cheek, and could have sworn I saw a flash pass over the house at that moment, like a shooting star crossing the sky. "Rest in peace, my brother," I whispered. "See you soon." 3 years have passed since that morning when Nathaniel left us. Today, looking back, I realize how life continues its course, even after such profound losses. The void he left was never completely filled. How could it be? But we learned to live with the absence, transforming the pain of longing into the sweetness of memories. The funeral was just as he would have liked, simple, with lots of music, flowers, and shared stories. To my surprise, the small public cemetery was full. Former colleagues from the bank showed up, old neighbors, even customers he had helped over the years. An older woman sought me out after the ceremony. "You must be Jeremiah," she said, holding my hands in hers. "Nathaniel talked about you so much." "I'm Clara. I worked cleaning the bank for 20 years. When my husband got sick and we didn't have money for the treatment, your friend Nathaniel loaned us an amount. No interest, no payment deadline. I'll never forget it." I heard dozens of similar stories that day. Nathaniel, always discreet, had never mentioned these acts of kindness. Like a quiet river, he had watered many lives around him, without fanfare, without seeking recognition. Following his request, we distributed the $15,000 among the 3 families he had mentioned. I did it as he wished, saying it was an anonymous donation. But I didn't stop there. Talking with Eulalia and Joshua, we decided to create a small fund in Nathaniel's name, not officially, just among ourselves, to continue helping those families and others in similar situations. It's our way of keeping his legacy of generosity alive. His apartment, as stipulated in the will, was divided among us. Joshua suggested selling it and using the money for the fund we created. But I couldn't. That place held too many memories. Instead, we renovated it and turned it into a space where low-income young people can receive free tutoring. We named it the Nathaniel Hawthorne Cultural Center. Twice a week, even at 74, I go there to teach geography and astronomy classes to children and teenagers. Eulalia joins me sometimes, teaching basic health concepts. Joshua also participates, offering career guidance. Our grandchildren, now 17, 15, and 13, help during school breaks. Clara, our eldest granddaughter, was the most involved in the project. She's studying astronomy in college, following in her grandfather's footsteps, she says proudly. One day, while we were setting up the telescope on the building's rooftop for an activity with the kids, she asked me a question that resonated in my mind. "Grandpa, do you think Uncle Nathaniel would be proud of what we did with his apartment?" "I'm sure of it, my father," I replied. He always had that gift for uniting people, for creating family, where there were no blood ties. What we're doing here is exactly that, extending the concept of family to include these young people who need support. At home, we keep his memory alive in many ways. The room where Nathaniel spent his final days is now a study, but his photographs are still on the walls. The telescope is still there by the window. Sometimes, on a clear night, I catch myself looking at the stars and talking to him mentally, telling him the news, asking for advice. One of the most interesting things that happened in these 3 years was the reappearance of Denise, Nathaniel's former love. She saw the news of his passing in the local paper and came to the wake. A widow for some years, she lived in Baltimore. We exchanged contact information, and little by little, she became a constant presence in our lives. I never stopped thinking about him, you know? She confessed to me one time while we were drinking coffee on the porch. Even after I got married and had children, I always wondered what it would have been like if we had stayed together. "He thought of you too," I told her. In his final days, he confessed that breaking up with you was the biggest regret of his life. She wiped away a discreet tear. It's funny how life plays tricks on us, isn't it? So many years lost due to fear, due to insecurity. Denise now visits us regularly and also volunteers at the apartment project, teaching literature classes. It's as if, in some way, the circle has closed. Another significant change was regarding my mother-in-law, Mrs. Imelda. After the misunderstanding about Eulalia and Nathaniel, she became even closer to us, as if she wanted to make up for it. At 95, with increasingly fragile health, she ended up moving into our house last year. Now it's Eulalia who takes care of her with the same dedication she once cared for Nathaniel. "I never imagined I would live this long," Mrs. Imelda sometimes comments, sitting in her rocking chair. "I've already buried my husband, friends, even younger people like Nathaniel. Why does God keep me here for so long?" Because you still have so much to teach us, I respond, holding her wrinkled hand. Every day with you is a gift. And it's true. Her presence in the house constantly reminds us of the value of elders, the wisdom that only experience brings, and the importance of cherishing every moment with those we love. 2 weeks ago, I took my 3 grandchildren to the Park Hill, fulfilling the promise I made to Nathaniel before he passed. It was a clear, moonless night, perfect for stargazing. We brought the telescope, snacks, and sat in the same spot where decades ago I, Eulalia, Nathaniel, and Denise used to gather. Grandpa, tell us again how you and Grandma met. Annie, now a 13-year-old teenager, but still with that sweet way she had as a child, requested. And I told the story, for the 100th time, about the public library, the tutoring, the astronomical expeditions. Then I talked about Nathaniel, about our childhood friendship, about how he was always present in every important moment of our lives. Look up there, I pointed to the sky. That bright star to the right of the Orion constellation. I always think that's Nathaniel looking down at us. Ben, the middle grandchild, who is 15, let out a chuckle. Grandpa, aren't you too scientific to believe in that? Science explains many things, son, but it doesn't explain everything, I replied with a smile. There are mysteries in the universe that go beyond what we can measure and calculate. Love is one of them. True friendship is another. Clara, always the most sensitive, put her arm around my shoulders. I understand, Grandpa. When I look through the telescope, I feel closer, not just to the stars, but to those who have already left. We returned home late that night with that pleasant feeling of having shared meaningful moments. Eulalia was waiting for us with hot cocoa and corn cookies, just like in the old days. Now, sitting here on the porch of our house in Silver Spring, at 74, watching the sun set behind the hills I have known since childhood, I reflect on everything I have lived, the joys, the sorrows, the surprises that fate holds for us. Life has taught me that the strongest bonds are not always those of blood, that family is who we choose to walk beside us, that trust is the foundation of any lasting relationship, and that even in the darkest moments, when we unjustly suspect those we love, it's possible to find light, forgiveness, and a new beginning. The story I started telling about an unexpected phone call, a suspicion of infidelity, and a painful misunderstanding ended up transforming into a journey of love, loyalty, and farewell. We lost Nathaniel to cancer, but we gained a deeper understanding of what truly matters. Eulalia and I will celebrate 50 years of marriage next year, half a century together, building memories, overcoming challenges, creating a family that now extends far beyond blood ties. When I look at her, with her completely white hair now, I still see the same young woman with obsidian-colored eyes I met at the public library in 1973. What are you thinking about, my life? She asks, bringing 2 cups of coffee and sitting beside me. How blessed we are, I reply, taking her hand, even with all the losses, all the difficulties. Nathaniel always used to say that life is like the starry sky, she comments, looking up where the first stars are beginning to appear. It has moments of darkness, but it's the lights, even the distant ones, that guide us. And so we continue. Eulalia and I, guided by the lights of those we love, those who are still here and those who have already left, like fixed stars in the firmament of our existence, illuminating the way even on the darkest nights. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen, so you can choose what to watch next.